Now, Sony has gotten a lot right this generation, which goes to show with the sales that they have for the PlayStation 4, which is coming up on 100 million. It's actually less than 6 million away. It's like 94 and some change right now for unit sales. And they're coming up on that 100 million. But one thing that Microsoft has complete dominance over, and it's pretty much, you just can't argue against it, is Microsoft's ability to offer backwards compatibility. Not only offer backwards compatibility, but when you put like an older game in, let's say Final Fantasy 13 just as an example, or even Red Dead Redemption, you pop that game in, it downloads it, and then they also have like these almost remastered looking visuals. Like they will smooth it out, they'll have it set up for 4K so it looks good. Like 13 compared to the 360 to the Xbox One is a large jump. We even see original Xbox games get pretty good jumps in terms of frame rate and even just the visual quality. Something like Knights of the Old Republic, just as an example, is great on the Xbox One and the Xbox One X, probably like 60 frames a good bit of the time on the Xbox One X, which if you played it back on the original Xbox, frame rate was pretty bad. So it was really cool to see that get that nice treatment, and a lot of games are getting it. They keep adding more and more, and you just need the disc. If you already have it, you can pop it in. Otherwise, you buy it on their shop for a couple dollars. And for people who don't think that backwards compatibility has an actual effect on sales, they'll be wrong, because we see things like Call of Duty, for example, get added to backwards compatibility on the Xbox One. Something like Modern Warfare 2, that actually jumped back into the NPD charts. It was weird. It showed up on like the top 10 for that month, which threw a lot of people off, but that was because, of course, they count digital sales, and a lot of people bought it, which of course gave Microsoft money. And these other companies seem interested in helping out with some of the just fixing up the visuals and everything. So it makes sense why what we're seeing now, Sony would probably want to make the PlayStation 5 backwards compatible. That makes a ton of sense. We all want it, right? And yesterday, or even late last night, I guess you'd say, because it's 1:31, it was made public, this filing of them apparently figuring out a way to make the PlayStation 5 backwards compatible with what they claim to be in this patent, like all previous PlayStation software. That should be really exciting. Now, this is under rumor wave just because Sony has not said anything about this yet, but you're going to see a name attached to this, and it's going to kind of make you go, oh, that's why you're seeing so many places talk about it. The other reason I have this under rumor wave is because we have to rely on Google Translate, at least from what I'm seeing, to get an idea of what's going on here. I will leave a link to this patent in the description, so if you are familiar with the Japanese language, maybe you can go through this and give people a better understanding or idea as to what's being said here, because it is very interesting to see kind of how they're doing this. Other sites took a shot at, let me go ahead and hit, there we go, translate. Other sites took a shot at translating it and everything, but they also gave us this nice little flow chart here, which is pretty cool. So let's go through here, and they just basically try to explain everything the best that they can. You can see the claims here: responding by returning information on a processor different from said processor on said computing device to a call from an application to information on a processor on said computing device. So what this is essentially explaining, you can even see the flowchart. They've made it pretty clear. Basically, this patent is designed in a way that when the application begins, the processor will check if it's a legacy application, and then it will move to spoof the correct processor that's needed. As in, it's designed to emulate, essentially, the processor from the PlayStation 1, or the PlayStation 2, or maybe the PlayStation 3. That's kind of where it's throwing me through a loop, because up until this point, the PS3 was thought to be unthinkable when it comes to backwards compatibility. We never even talked about it, because we just said, no, it's too complicated. But it almost feels like, looking at this, them saying previous PlayStation software, all previous PlayStation software apparently, this would be a way for them to bring even PlayStation 3 games to the PlayStation 5 without too much effort outside of all of this work here, I guess. And it seems like, yeah, it's probably a lot of work. Now, I don't know if this is going to be something that's going to be set up to where all games just work instantly, or if it's going to be what Microsoft has had to do, which is basically work all different games into this. But I want to point out one of the coolest things that could happen here, and it's going to come down to if Sony wants to do it this way, similar to what Microsoft is doing, where if you have the disc, it works. Because if you remember, back with the PlayStation 3, they did that, where you could pop in a PlayStation 1 or PS2 disc, and it worked right away, like day one, it was fine. They did use some hardware, they had the Emotion Engine, but they moved away from that, and then they had software that worked with like 80% of the library, but from day one, you could just pop the disc in and it worked. I'm hoping this is for that idea that you can pop the disc in and then it will spoof the correct processor using the processor cores in the PlayStation 5, and then you're off and running. Maybe they have some higher resolution setup or something for it, better looking textures and everything. That would probably be an update, and that could be something that I would see them work on. But the PlayStation 3 had smoothing for textures and rough edges, and it also would even upscale to 1080 and everything. So it had a lot going on in that regard. Now let me scroll down here, and I'm actually going to, they go through a lot of explanation. There's a lot of stuff to read through here that, I mean, really goes into detail on how they're going to accomplish all of this. This is a patent that they really spent time on. And you might be saying, oh, that's interesting that Sony would spend time on that, but they file, patents all the time. And I'll say, yes, they do. This one is fascinating because, and of course, Google Translate translated it wrong. This is from Mark Cerny. Mark Cerny is this gentleman. He's the lead architect on the PlayStation 4. Do you remember in 2013, they were talking about the PlayStation 4, and he was actually there, and he talked about like the RAM that was in it and x86 and all this stuff. I think PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 for backwards compatibility is a given because they're both x86 and everything. It should be pretty straightforward, I would assume anyway. But this is made by Mark Cerny. This is patented and put out there and authored here by him, which tells me that since he would, we assume, more than likely be the lead architect on the PlayStation 5 after the PS4 did so well, if he's designing something like that and creating the patent, then he might even be designing the PlayStation 5 to work pretty much straight up with that patent. And since he would be the one designing the patent and the way for it to emulate older systems, then that means that the system he's designing from a hardware standpoint might have that in mind, which is very exciting for anyone who really wants to have backwards compatibility, where several places started covering it. PlayStation 5 backwards compatibility suggested by Sony patent. And they, of course, I'll say all previous PlayStation consoles covered. And there is several, like I said, several different places that have done nothing but cover this. And it is an exciting thing to see because, one, we haven't seen a lot about the PlayStation 5, but if Sony can get on this backwards compatibility bandwagon and we get like day one, even year one, but I'll pretend like day one, we can come home, and if you have a PlayStation 1 disc of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, you can walk it over to your PlayStation 5, you can pop the disc into the Blu-ray drive, and all of a sudden Castlevania is playing on your 4K TV with upscaled visuals. I mean, it's still a PS1 game, right? I mean, you can only get so much out of it, but maybe you get a PS2 game. Maybe there's a PS3 game you really like Skate 3, that you want to pop in and play. You can do that. That is the direction I hope to go in here, and this is, again, it's still a rumor, but this was public, or made public, as I see their publication date, January 31st, 2019. That was yesterday. I mean, this looks straightforward, but we'll see if this is fully incorporated because patents are filed a lot. This one was just done by Mark Cerny, who was more than likely heading up the PlayStation 5 team and everything, so we'll see what happens here. But let me know what you guys think about this patent down below and the idea of backwards compatibility for the PS5. Again, the patent link is down below in the description. You can check that out. Make sure you guys give this video a like if you liked it, dislike it if not. And guys, I'll see you next time.